Housekeeper's daughter sees the billionaire in the pool and asks, "Can you teach me to swim like a dad?" His answer leaves everyone in tears. The house was too perfect. Every object in its right place, every surface flawless, every room organized as if it were a showcase from a home decor magazine. It was the kind of place that impressed visitors and suffocated those who lived in it. Ethan woke up to the same silence as always. There were no voices, no laughter, not even the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Just the emptiness echoing through the vacant rooms of a mansion that seemed to grow larger with each day he spent alone in it. He walked down the marble staircase toward the kitchen. His bare feet made a sharp sound against the floor, momentarily breaking the silence before it was swallowed again by the quiet of the house. It was like living inside a museum, beautiful to look at, impossible to feel at home in. The kitchen had every appliance a man could dream of. A smart fridge, a professional stove, an Italian coffee machine. Everything worked perfectly, and everything was used by just one person. He prepared breakfast, always the same thing, always in the same order, always eating alone at a table that could seat an entire family. As he drank his coffee, he looked through the window at the garden. A perfect lawn, a crystal-clear pool, plants trimmed with military precision. Everything was beautiful, everything was lifeless, as if perfection had sucked all the spontaneity out of the place. Outside, the world was waking up. Cars drove by on the street. Neighbors left for work, children ran to the school bus. Life was happening everywhere, except within those impeccable walls. Ethan got ready for another day at the office. Expensive suit, expensive shoes, expensive watch. The armor of a successful man who had forgotten what it felt like to be happy. At 35, he had achieved everything society said he should want. Money, status, a thriving company. He just hadn't figured out why none of it mattered when he came home. Work was his refuge during the day. At the office, he had a purpose, decisions to make, people to lead, problems to solve. He was good at what he did, perhaps too good. Success had become a golden cage that kept him busy but not fulfilled. Meetings, phone calls, contracts. The day went by quickly when he was surrounded by people. Efficient secretaries, ambitious partners, satisfied clients. They all talked to him about business, numbers, strategies. No one asked how he was doing. No one really knew him beyond the numbers he produced. Coming home was always the hardest part. The key in the lock, the door opening to the familiar silence. It was like entering an empty cathedral, solemn, impressive, and completely lifeless. Dinner alone had become a melancholic ritual, a table for 12, with him occupying only one chair. Gourmet food he could barely taste, the television on just to create some background noise. Sometimes he would catch himself talking to himself, just to hear a human voice in that space. After dinner, he would walk through the halls of the house like a ghost haunting his own life. He would stop in front of the expensive paintings he had chosen himself, but they stirred no emotion. Art bought to impress, not to inspire. In the living room, his eyes always fell on the same object, an old wooden clock on the shelf. Its hands had been stopped for years, pointing to a moment frozen in time. Ethan never bothered to fix it. In a way, that broken clock perfectly represented his life, beautiful on the outside, but with something fundamental that had stopped working. And then came the best moment of the day, the pool. The outdoor area was the only place in the house where he felt truly free. The infinity pool reflected the sky and the city lights in the distance. There, finally, he could breathe. Ethan would undress and dive into the warm water. The first contact with the pool was always a relief, as if the water could wash away not just the day's sweat, but also the weight of the loneliness he carried on his shoulders. He swam with precise, rhythmic strokes. Stroke after stroke, cutting through the crystal-clear surface in a solitary dance that repeated every night. There, he didn't have to be the successful executive, didn't have to smile for anyone, didn't have to pretend everything was okay. The water enveloped him like an embrace he no longer received from anyone else. For an hour, sometimes two, he was just a man swimming in a pool. Simple as that. No complications, no expectations, no loneliness following him like a shadow during the rest of the day. When night fell completely, the automatic pool lights would turn on, creating golden reflections in the water. Ethan would float on his back, looking up at the stars twinkling in the dark sky. They were the same stars that millions of people were watching at that moment, but he watched them alone, always alone. Sometimes he wondered if there was something wrong with him. Why couldn't he connect with people? Why were all his relationships superficial? Why, even surrounded by success, did he feel so empty? The answers never came. Only more questions, more doubts, more silence. After his swim, he would go up to his bedroom, a huge suite that looked more like a luxury hotel room than the bedroom of someone who actually lived there. A king-sized bed where he always slept on the same side, leaving the other side cold and empty. He would pick up a random book from the nightstand. He'd read a few pages without really processing the words until exhaustion took over and his eyes closed. And the next day it all began again. The same routine, the same loneliness, the same emptiness. A perfectly organized and completely meaningless life. On the living room shelf, the clock remained still. Its hands pointed to a moment stuck in the past, as if time had given up on passing in that house. Ethan sometimes looked at it and saw himself, handsome, expensive, but fundamentally broken. He didn't know it, but changes were coming. Sometimes they come disguised as simple things, an innocent question, a shy smile, the sound of laughter echoing where before there was only silence. For now, however, there was only the quiet. The silence that filled every corner of that perfect house, like an unfulfilled promise waiting for its moment to happen. The change arrived on an ordinary Monday, disguised as normality. Ethan was in his office reviewing contracts when the cleaning agency called to inform him that they would be sending a new employee. The previous one had resigned to take care of her sick mother. Another personal story he only half listened to, another face that would pass through his house without leaving a trace. He barely paid attention to the name when the receptionist said it. Clara something. She would arrive on Tuesday morning, 3 times a week, just like all the others. One more person who would enter his life merely as a paid service, do her job in silence, and leave without him even noticing her presence. At least, that's what he thought. On Tuesday, Ethan left for work at his usual time. When he returned late in the afternoon, the house was as impeccable as ever. A few objects had been moved by millimeters. Glasses were back in slightly different cabinets. Magazines were repositioned with almost military precision. The only evidence that someone had been there, aside from the fresh scent of cleaning products that would soon fade. On Thursday, it was the same thing. A clean house. Everything organized with care. No sign of the new housekeeper's presence beyond the feeling that every surface had been polished to perfection. Ethan even wondered if she was more efficient than the last one. She managed to do the work almost invisibly. It was in the second week that things started to feel different. Ethan arrived home earlier than usual. An important meeting had been cancelled at the last minute when the client had to travel unexpectedly. As he entered the main hall, he heard something he hadn't heard within those walls for years. Voices, a woman's voice, low and careful, and another voice, high-pitched and full of life, a child. For a few seconds, he stood still in the entryway, just listening. He couldn't make out the exact words, but there was something in the cadence of the conversation that made him deeply curious. It sounded like affection, like family intimacy, like a mother and daughter talking naturally without masks or formalities. He went up the stairs silently, not wanting to interrupt whatever was happening. From his bedroom, he could hear the voices coming from the living room more clearly. The woman was giving instructions, probably about how to behave in a stranger's house, while the child asked questions about absolutely everything. "Mommy, can I touch the books on the shelf?" "No, Maya. You don't touch anything without permission. We've already talked about this, but they're so pretty. Do you think he's really read all of them? There are so many." "I don't know, sweetie. Now be quiet while Mommy finishes up in here." Maya. The child's name was Maya, a beautiful, delicate name. Ethan moved closer to his bedroom window, which overlooked the garden and offered a partial view of the pool area. He could see a small figure sitting on the edge of the pool, dangling her little legs in the crystal-clear water, blonde hair shining brightly under the afternoon sun, a pink t-shirt that seemed too big for her small frame, and faded denim shorts that had seen better days. It was the first time in years he had seen a child on his property. The first time he had heard a child's laughter echoing through hallways that only knew the sound of his own footsteps. In the following days, he developed a strange and inexplicable curiosity. He started coming home a few minutes earlier, just to hear those voices that brought life to his dead house. He discovered, through snippets of conversations he overheard, that the housekeeper, Clara, brought her daughter on days when she had no one else to leave her with. Apparently, the babysitter had cancelled several times, and Clara had no close family to help. Maya was 5 years old, curious like any healthy child, but surprisingly obedient. She would sit quietly while her mother worked, sometimes playing with a rag doll she carried in a faded pink backpack, other times simply observing the world around her with huge, interested eyes. Ethan never intentionally showed himself. He would stay upstairs, pretending to work in his home office, but always listening for the sounds from downstairs. It was strange how the whole house seemed different with them there, less empty, less oppressive, as if the presence of a child brought oxygen into rooms that for years had only recycled the same heavy air of solitude. One Thursday afternoon, Clara was cleaning the living room windows when Maya slipped away from her mother's supervision. Ethan was in the pool, performing his methodical strokes, when he heard small footsteps approaching from the patio. He stopped swimming immediately and looked toward the sound. The girl was standing at the edge of the pool, watching him with enormous, curious, light blue eyes. Blonde hair messy from the gentle afternoon breeze, wearing a simple cotton dress that had clearly been well loved but was still clean and cared for. But there was something special in her eyes, a fascinating mix of natural shyness and childish determination that took him completely by surprise. For a few long seconds, they just looked at each other in silence. Ethan floating in the warm water, the girl standing on the concrete edge, as if they were both cautiously sizing each other up, trying to decide if the other was safe. It was Maya who had the courage to break the silence first. "You swim really well," she said, with the clear, direct voice of someone who hasn't yet learned to be afraid of strangers or to filter her thoughts before speaking. Ethan slowly approached the edge, resting his wet arms on the warm coping. "Thank you. That's kind of you to say. Do you know how to swim?" Maya shook her head energetically, making her blonde curls dance in the air. "No, I never learned. Mommy works a lot and doesn't have money to take me to a swimming school or a club." There was a devastating honesty in the way she spoke about her family's financial limitations, a naturalness that showed she didn't yet fully understand the social weight of these differences, only accepting them as facts of life. "Would you like to learn?" Ethan asked, without thinking much about the implications of what he was offering. Maya's eyes lit up like stars. "I would love to. I've always dreamed of knowing how to swim for real." But she paused, biting her lower lip in a gesture she had probably inherited from her mother. "Could you teach me like a dad would? It's just that I don't have a dad to teach me these things." The question hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. Not because of its cruelty. The girl had spoken with the absolute naturalness of someone who doesn't yet fully understand the emotional weight of words, but because of the devastating simplicity of that confession, the way she had exposed such a deep need with such innocence. Before Ethan could formulate any kind of appropriate response, he heard hurried footsteps approaching the pool area. "Maya!" Clara's voice sounded distressed, almost desperate. "Maya, where are you? I told you not to leave the living room." The girl turned toward her mother's voice but didn't move from where she stood. Clara appeared, running through the garden with a cleaning cloth still in her right hand, her dirty blonde hair tied in a ponytail that was coming undone from the movement. When she finally saw her daughter standing by the pool where Ethan was, her face visibly paled. "Maya, don't bother him," she said quickly, moving to take the girl by her small hand. "I'm so sorry, sir. She slipped away for a second while I was distracted. I promise it won't happen again." Clara looked to be in her late 20s, pretty in a simple and completely natural way, with tired blue eyes that seemed to carry responsibilities far too heavy for someone so young. She was visibly nervous, genuinely afraid that her daughter had caused some kind of trouble that could jeopardize her job. Ethan calmly got out of the pool, grabbing the fluffy towel that was on a nearby chair. Maya remained standing exactly between the two adults, looking from one to the other, as if eagerly awaiting an answer to her question about swimming lessons. "She's no bother?" Ethan said, methodically drying his face with the towel. His voice came out much calmer and more controlled than he expected, considering the emotional turmoil he felt inside. "Not at all." Clara squeezed her daughter's hand, clearly wanting to get out of there as quickly as possible. "Even so, I apologize. She's very curious and sometimes doesn't understand social boundaries. She's still learning. Maya asked me if I could teach her how to swim," Ethan continued, deliberately ignoring Clara's constant apologies. He looked directly at the little girl, who was watching him with pure expectation and hope shining in her bright eyes. "If you'll let me, I would love to teach her." The silence that followed was charged with an almost palpable tension. Clara looked at Ethan as if he had suddenly spoken in a completely foreign language. Maya looked at her mother with the pleading, hopeful eyes of a child who has just been given the chance to realize a dream she didn't know could come true. I really can't accept that," Clara finally stammered, struggling to find the right words. "You're already very kind to let me bring her sometimes when I have no other choice. I can't abuse your kindness and patience even more." "It's not kindness," Ethan replied, surprised by his own sincerity and the ease with which the words came out. "It's genuine interest. It's been a long time since I've seen a child so curious and well-behaved." Maya tugged insistently on her mother's hand. "Please, Mommy. I've always wanted to learn how to swim for real. And he swims so well. I saw him doing those beautiful moves in the water." Clara hesitated visibly, torn between the natural desire to make her daughter happy and the deep-seated fear of overstepping professional boundaries she shouldn't cross. Ethan could clearly see the internal conflict in her expressive eyes. The loving mother who wanted to give her daughter every possible opportunity, fighting against the conscientious employee who knew exactly her place in the social hierarchy. "So if you're worried about her drowning or getting hurt, I can start just in the shallow end," Ethan offered, trying to sound as reassuring as possible. "And only when you're nearby to supervise, so you can be completely at ease." "Mommy, please," Maya insisted, with that special tone only children know how to use, innocent, hopeful, and practically impossible to deny without feeling guilty. Clara sighed deeply, clearly defeated by the combination of her daughter's insistence and Ethan's unexpected kindness. "If you're absolutely sure it won't be a bother or disrupt your routine." "I'm completely sure," Ethan replied immediately, before she could change her mind. "How about we start tomorrow? When you come to work, Maya can bring a swimsuit." Maya literally jumped for joy. Her little feet left the ground for a few seconds as she clapped her hands and squealed with happiness. Thank you so much. I'm going to learn to swim for real like a mermaid." Clara still seemed hesitant and a bit uncomfortable with the situation, but there was a small, genuine smile playing at the corner of her mouth as she watched her daughter's pure joy. "Maya, what do you say to the gentleman?" "Thank you, sir." Maya paused, suddenly realizing she didn't know his name. "Ethan," he said simply. "You can call me Ethan, no more, sir." "Thank you, Ethan," she said cheerfully, testing the name on her tongue as if it were a magic word. "Psych, I'm going to be the best swimming student in the whole world." Ethan smiled, a genuine, spontaneous smile he hadn't felt in years. "I'm absolutely sure you will be." Clara gently pulled her daughter by the arm. "Now, let's let Ethan rest in peace. So I still have to finish cleaning the upstairs rooms." As the two walked away toward the house, Ethan heard Maya chattering excitedly about her future swimming lessons, making elaborate plans about the strokes she would learn and the dives she would do. The girl's voice echoed through the empty halls of the house, filling the perpetual silence with a vital energy he had completely forgotten existed. That night, after they had gone and the house returned to its familiar silence, Ethan had dinner as usual, alone at the giant table that could easily seat 12 people. But there was something definitely different in the air. A remnant of life and joy that still lingered in the rooms like a delicate perfume. For the first time in many years, the house didn't feel completely dead. The next day, Ethan surprised himself by leaving the office earlier than usual and driving home with a strange sense of anticipation. He didn't want to admit to himself that he was eager to see Maya again, but the undeniable fact was, that he was in an inexplicable hurry to get home. Clara was methodically cleaning the kitchen when he arrived. Maya was sitting politely at the table, drawing with crayons in a well-used school notebook. When she saw him come in, she immediately jumped out of her chair. "Ethan." "I brought my swimsuit," she said, proudly pointing to a small plastic bag. "Mommy said I can swim today if you still want to teach me." Clara turned, still a bit awkward with the situation. "If yesterday's generous offer is still on the table—" "Of course it is," Ethan said, feeling a strange and inexplicable excitement growing in his chest. "Let's go, Maya. Your first official swimming lesson." And just like that, everything began to change forever. Maya was an absolutely natural student. Brave without being reckless, curious without being stubborn or disrespectful. On the first day, Ethan patiently taught her to float, holding her gently in the warm water as she laughed and splashed, completely unafraid. Clara sat in a nearby chair, pretending to read an old magazine she had found, but carefully watching her daughter's every move. "Mommy, look! I'm floating by myself!" Maya shouted proudly, managing to float for a few seconds without help. "I see, sweetie. You're doing great. Ethan is an excellent teacher." By the second day, Maya was already trying to coordinate basic arm movements. On the third day, she managed to swim a few short feet without any help. Her constant laughter echoed around the pool area, a crystal-clear sound that Ethan discovered he had been waiting for without even knowing it. "You're a very, very good teacher," Maya said one day, after managing to swim an entire width of the pool for the first time. "I bet you'd be a really good dad, too. You have patience and you're kind." The absolute innocence of the observation caught Ethan completely off guard. Clara, who was folding clean towels nearby, immediately stopped what she was doing and looked in their direction with a worried expression. "Maya," she said softly, "don't say such personal things. But it's true, Mommy. He's very patient and kind to me, and he smiles when I get something right." Maya looked directly at Ethan with her bright, sincere blue eyes. "You like kids, don't you, Ethan?" "I do," he replied, surprised to realize it was completely true. "Especially curious and brave kids like you, Maya." Maya beamed with pride, giving an exaggerated little bow that made her lose her balance and fall back into the water with a splash, causing general laughter. Clara continued folding towels, but Ethan noticed a thoughtful and slightly confused expression on her young face. The following weeks passed quickly, and the swimming lessons became a natural part of everyone's routine. Maya improved noticeably each day, and Ethan found himself eagerly looking forward to the days Clara worked. The entire house seemed transformed when they were there. Maya's constant laughter filled hallways that had only known echoes for years. Her endless questions about absolutely everything, from the expensive paintings on the walls to the imaginary fish she insisted must live at the bottom of the pool, brought a contagious vitality to places that had long known only the heavy silence of solitude. "Why do you live all alone in such a giant house?" she asked one day, as direct as only a child can be without malice or judgment. "Maya!" Clara immediately scolded her. "Don't ask Ethan personal questions." "It's no problem at all," Ethan said sincerely. "Say it's a very honest and intelligent question." He looked at Maya, who was awaiting the answer with genuine curiosity shining in her eyes. "I guess I never found the right people to share this space with." "You don't have a family," she continued, unable to stop once she started asking questions. "I don't have a family, Maya." Maya was thoughtful for a long moment, processing this information with the seriousness that children sometimes display. "We don't have a big family either, just me and Mommy, but we have a lot of fun anyway. A family doesn't have to be big, right?" Clara turned visibly red, clearly embarrassed. "Maya, that's enough personal questions for now." But Ethan was beginning to understand that these seemingly innocent questions were stirring something buried deep inside him, something he had locked away long ago, and that Maya, with her devastating simplicity and crystal-clear honesty, was slowly unearthing, revealing layers of emotional needs he no longer knew existed. With each passing day, he found himself eagerly awaiting the familiar sound of the key in the door, the little footsteps running down the marble hallway, the high-pitched, cheerful voice asking if it was time for a swimming lesson yet. The house was changing completely. He was changing. And it had all started with a simple, devastating question from a 5-year-old girl who didn't know she didn't have a father, but knew exactly what she wanted from someone who could teach her to swim like a dad would. As the weeks went by, Ethan began to notice things he hadn't before. Small details that seeped into his consciousness, like rays of sunlight through long-closed curtains. The way Clara organized her bag before starting work. Everything in its place, each item with its specific function. The way she folded Maya's clothes with a care that bordered on reverence, as if each piece were precious. The way her eyes would light up discreetly when she heard her daughter laughing in the pool, even while she was focused on cleaning. Clara had a calm presence that completely contrasted with the emotional chaos Ethan carried within him. It wasn't a forced or artificial calm, it was something genuine, built through experiences he didn't yet fully understand. There was a firmness in her movements, a quiet certainty of someone who knew exactly where she stood and why. She never complained. Even on days when she arrived visibly tired, with dark circles under her eyes betraying sleepless nights, Clara performed her job with the same meticulous dedication. She never asked to leave early, never complained about extra tasks, never showed impatience with Maya when the girl was more restless than usual. Ethan began to observe how she interacted with her daughter during breaks. There was a genuine tenderness there, but also clear boundaries. Clara wasn't permissive. When Maya crossed a line, she was corrected firmly, but always with love. There were never shouts, never empty threats, just consistent guidance that showed how seriously Clara took her responsibility as a mother. "Maya, don't touch Ethan's things without permission," she would say when the girl got too close to the bookshelf. "But Mommy, there are so many pretty books." "I know, sweetie, but they're not ours. If you want to see one, you can ask him to show you." And Maya would obey, not because she was afraid of her mother, but because she genuinely respected her authority. It was clear that Clara had built this relationship of trust through years of consistency and affection. Ethan also noticed how Clara related to the space of the house. She cleaned each room as if it were her own home, with an attention to detail that went far beyond what would be necessary for a regular job. She would rearrange the books on the shelf by height, ensure the sofa cushions were perfectly aligned, and polish every decorative object until it shone. But it wasn't subservience, it was professional pride. Clara clearly cared about the quality of her work, regardless of who the beneficiary was. There was a quiet dignity in the way she performed her tasks that Ethan found deeply admirable. One Thursday afternoon, after Maya had finished her swimming lesson and was playing in the garden with her rag doll, Ethan noticed that Clara was putting away her cleaning supplies more slowly than usual. She was usually extremely efficient, packing everything up in a matter of minutes. Today, she seemed to be drawing out the process. When she finally finished, Maya ran to her asking to go to the bathroom. Clara accompanied her, and Ethan heard their voices echoing down the halls, the mother giving instructions on hand-washing, the daughter chattering about the fish she had imagined seeing at the bottom of the pool. When they returned, Clara began to pack Maya's backpack with the same care as always. A dry towel in a separate bag, wet clothes in another, the doll settled in the main compartment. It was a ritual Ethan had observed several times, but today he paid special attention to the meticulousness with which she made each movement. "Clara," he said suddenly, surprising himself with his own courage, "would you like to have some coffee?" "Before you go." She stopped packing the backpack and looked at him with an expression of genuine surprise. "Coffee?" "Yes. I was about to make some for myself, and I thought, if you'd like to stay a few more minutes." Clara hesitated, looking at Maya, who was sitting on the edge of the pool, swinging her feet in the water. "I don't want to interfere with your evening plans." "I have no plans," Ethan said sincerely. "And it's no trouble at all. In fact, it would be pleasant company." Maya overheard the conversation and immediately perked up. "Mommy, let's have coffee with Ethan. Please." Clara smiled at her daughter, then looked back at Ethan. There was something in her eyes, a desire to accept fighting against what was likely a natural caution. "If you're sure it's no bother." "I'm absolutely sure." They settled in the outdoor area at a small table with a view of the garden. Ethan prepared coffee for the adults and found an apple juice for Maya. who was delighted to be sitting at the table like a grown-up as she declared herself. "Your daughter is incredible," Ethan said, after Maya ran off to chase a butterfly that had landed on a nearby rose bush. "That comes from you." Clara lowered her eyes to her coffee cup, a shy smile playing on her lips. "Says she is a special child. Sometimes I think she's more mature than I am." "I highly doubt that," Ethan replied, watching how Clara followed her daughter's every move with an attentive gaze. "You have a patience I admire, and a firmness, too. It's a rare combination." "I didn't have much of a choice," Clara said simply, without drama. "When you're all a child has, you learn quickly to be what she needs." There was something in the way she said that which touched Ethan deeply. It wasn't self-pity or a plea for sympathy. It was just a factual statement, said with the naturalness of someone who had completely accepted her reality. "Say, have you always lived here in the city?" he asked, genuinely curious about her story. Clara shook her head. "We came from a smaller town, about 2 hours from here. We moved when Maya was 2. Was the move difficult?" "At the time, it felt impossible," she admitted, still watching Maya, who was now trying to coax the butterfly to land on her hand. "Says, but it was necessary. There weren't many job opportunities there, and I needed a place where I could start over." The words, "start over," hung in the air between them. Ethan sensed there was a deeper story there, but didn't want to press. Clara seemed to be carefully measuring how much to reveal. Maya came running back, excited because the butterfly had landed on her finger for a few seconds. "Mommy, did you see? It liked me." "I did, sweetie. You were very gentle with it." "Ethan, have you ever had a butterfly land on you?" Maya asked, climbing onto a chair next to him. "I have on a few times. They like calm and gentle people, like you." Maya smiled proudly, then turned her attention to an ant that was carrying a leaf. Clara took advantage of her daughter's distraction to continue the conversation. "You must be wondering about her father," she said in a low voice, as if deciding in that very moment whether to talk about it. Ethan shook his head. "It's none of my business. You don't have to explain anything." "I know, but I think I want to." Clara took a deep breath, as if preparing for a deep dive. "I got pregnant when I was 19. I was very young, very naive. I thought I knew everything about life." She paused, taking a sip of coffee as if needing fuel to continue. "Maya's father, he just disappeared when he found out about the pregnancy. There was no fight, no drama. One day he was there, the next he was gone. He left a note saying he wasn't ready to be a father." Ethan felt an unexpected anger rise in his chest. How could someone abandon a pregnant woman? How could someone just disappear and leave a child without a father? "So I'm sorry," he said, and he truly meant it. Clara shrugged. "At first it was devastating. I was alone, pregnant, broke, without much education. My parents had died in an accident when I was 17, so I had no family to help me." The way she told it, without self-pity or excessive drama, impressed Ethan. It was just the truth, raw and simple. "But you know what's interesting?" Clara continued, watching Maya, who was now building a small road for the ant with twigs. "After the initial shock, I realized it was probably for the best. If he didn't want to be there, if I had to beg him to stay, what kind of father would he have been anyway?" "You're right," Ethan agreed. "Maya deserves someone who wants to be present, not someone who's there out of obligation." "Exactly. And look how happy she is, how confident. I think I managed to give her that, at least." "You did. And much more than that." Clara smiled, a more open smile this time. "I worked any job I could find. Cleaning, waitressing, elder care. Sometimes 3 jobs at once. Maya stayed with neighbors when she was a baby, then in a daycare that cost almost everything I earned. That must have been very hard." "It was. But it also taught me a lot. It taught me that I'm stronger than I thought. It taught me that it's worth fighting for who you love. And it taught me that family has nothing to do with blood. It has to do with choice." Ethan was silent for a few moments, processing everything Clara had shared. There was a strength in that young woman that he had rarely encountered in people much older and more experienced. "Maya is lucky to have you as her mother," he said finally. "So I'm the lucky one to have her as my daughter," Clara replied. She saved me as much as I saved her. She gave me a purpose, made me want to be a better person. Maya chose that moment to run back, with her rag doll in her arms. "Mommy, Lila wants some coffee too," Clara laughed. "Lila has already had her dinner, sweetie. And we need to go home soon. Just a little longer," Maya pleaded. "It's so nice here." Clara looked at Ethan, who gave a discreet nod that there was no rush. 10 more minutes then." Maya celebrated by sitting on the ground to organize an imaginary picnic for her doll. Clara and Ethan watched in comfortable silence. "Thank you," Clara said suddenly. For what? For listening, for not judging, for being kind to Maya." She paused. "It's been a long time since I've talked to an adult about things other than work or practical responsibilities." "No, thank you," Ethan replied. "For trusting me and for letting me be a part of your lives, even if it's just a little bit." Clara studied him with curious eyes. "Judge, you're very different from what I imagined when I started working here." "How so?" "I thought you'd be just another rich, distant man. But you pay attention to people. You care." Ethan didn't know what to say. For the first time in years, someone had seen something in him beyond financial success or outward appearance. Clara had seen something he himself had forgotten existed. "Mommy, it's been more than 10 minutes, Maya announced, apparently with a very precise internal clock. Clara laughed. "You're right, sweetie. Let's pack up our things." As Clara helped Maya put the doll in her backpack, Ethan watched the dynamic between them. The mother's infinite patience, the daughter's natural obedience, the palpable love that flowed between them like an invisible electric current. "Can I ask you a question?" he said, as they were almost ready to leave. "Of course. How do you manage to be so balanced, even with all the difficulties you've faced?" Clara thought for a moment before answering. "I guess because I have no choice. Maya needs me whole, present, strong. So I find strength where I didn't even know it existed." She smiled. "And also because I've learned that complaining doesn't change anything, action does." Simple as that. No complex philosophies or elaborate theories, just a practical truth she had learned in the hardest school there is, real life. As they left, Maya turned to wave. "Bye, Ethan. Thanks for the coffee and the talk," Clara laughed. "She always thanks everyone for everything. I think I overdo it with the good manners." "It's not overdoing it," Ethan said. "It's good parenting." And Maya will carry that with her for the rest of her life. After they left, Ethan sat at the outdoor table for a long time, looking at the empty cups and replaying the entire conversation in his mind. For the first time in years, he had felt something he had almost forgotten existed. Genuine admiration for another human being. Clara wasn't just beautiful, though she was. She wasn't just a good mother, though she clearly was. She was something much rarer, a person who had faced real adversity and had come out stronger, with more integrity and more generous. That night, as he swam his usual laps in the pool, Ethan found himself thinking not only of Maya and her progress in swimming, but also of Clara and the quiet strength she wore, like a second skin. For the first time in a long time, he was genuinely interested in getting to know someone better, not out of romantic interest, at least not consciously yet, but out of a deep curiosity about how someone could go through so much and still retain the capacity to smile, to trust, to love unconditionally. Clara had given him a gift that afternoon, the reminder that genuine people existed in the world, people who faced real hardships with grace, who raised children with love instead of obligation, who worked with dignity regardless of the task. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt inspired by another human being. The idea came to him on a Friday, after a particularly hectic week at the office. Ethan was watching Maya play in the pool while Clara finished cleaning the house, and he suddenly realized that he only ever saw them during work hours. Clara was always in practical cleaning clothes, always in a hurry to finish her tasks, always reminding Maya not to get in the way. Would it be different to see them in a relaxed environment? What would Clara be like without the constant worry of work? What would Maya be like without the constraints of being in her boss's house? "Clara," he called out as she passed the pool area carrying a bucket of cleaning supplies. "Yes," she replied. stopping and looking at him with the automatic attention of someone always ready to receive instructions. "How about you two come over tomorrow not to work?" he added quickly, seeing the confused look on her face. "Just to, I don't know, have a nice time. Maya could swim without being rushed. You could have lunch here." Clara stood still for a few seconds, clearly processing the proposal. "Tomorrow is Saturday," she said, as if that were a complete explanation. "I know, that's the point. A day with no commitments, no rush." "I don't understand," Clara said slowly. "Are you inviting me to come here as a guest?" The way she asked made Ethan realize just how strange his proposal must sound. Bosses didn't invite their employees to spend Saturdays at their homes. That kind of relationship didn't exist in their world. "Maya," he called, deciding to appeal to an ally more receptive to the idea. "How about you guys come here tomorrow just to have fun? No work, no worries." Maya immediately stopped swimming and ran to the edge of the pool, her eyes shining with excitement. "For real? I can swim all day? If you want to, yes. And can I bring my doll so she can meet the pool too?" "Of course." Maya looked at her mother with a pleading expression that any parent would recognize instantly. "Mommy, can we please?" Clara was visibly hesitant. "Maya, Ethan is already very kind to us during the week. We can't abuse his kindness." "It's not an abuse," Ethan said. "It's a sincere invitation. You two make this house more cheerful. It would be a pleasure to have your company on a Saturday." "Mommy, he likes us," Maya said with the devastating simplicity only children possess. "When someone likes us, we can be friends, right?" Maya's childlike logic was irrefutable. Clara looked from her daughter to Ethan, clearly torn between the desire to make Maya happy and the fear of crossing lines she shouldn't cross. "If you're sure it won't be an inconvenience," she finally said. "I'm absolutely sure." "Then, what time? How about after lunch?" "Around 2 in the afternoon." Maya jumped out of the water and ran to hug her mother, completely soaking Clara's clothes. "Thank you, Mommy. It's going to be the best Saturday of my life." Clara laughed, trying to dodge the droplets Maya was splashing around. "Calm down, sweetie. It's not even Saturday yet." "But I already know it's going to be special," Maya declared with the absolute confidence of a 5-year-old. The following Saturday, Ethan found himself tidying up the house in a way he never had before. It wasn't cleaning. Clara had already left everything impeccable on Friday. It was something different. He put on some ambient music, prepared a tray of fresh fruit, and arranged extra towels in the pool area. At 2 o'clock sharp, he heard the doorbell ring. When he opened the door, he almost didn't recognize Clara. Instead of her practical work clothes, she was wearing a simple, light blue cotton dress that highlighted her eyes. Her hair, usually tied back in a functional ponytail, was down and shone in the afternoon sun. She looked younger, more relaxed. Maya was beside her, wearing a little pink dress and carrying a backpack that was probably full of toys. "Ethan, I brought Lila to meet your pool." "That's great. I'm sure she'll love it." Clara still seemed a bit uncomfortable. "As thank you for the invitation. I hope you don't regret it." "Impossible," Ethan replied, and he knew it was true. They settled in the outdoor area. Ethan had prepared fresh juices, sparkling water, and the fruit tray, which included strawberries, grapes, and watermelon slices. Maya was thrilled with the variety. "Can I eat as many strawberries as I want?" she asked, already grabbing a handful. "As many as you can handle," Ethan replied, amused by her enthusiasm. Soft music played from the outdoor sound system, nothing too elaborate, just calm melodies that created a pleasant atmosphere without overpowering the conversation. Maya ran to the pool with Lila, determined to teach the doll how to swim. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble," Clara said, watching her daughter. "She would have been happy just to be here. I wanted to do something special. It's been a long time since I've had visitors who really matter." Clara looked at him with curiosity. "You don't have friends who come over?" "I have acquaintances," Ethan said thoughtfully. "People who show up for business dinners, social events. But I don't have friends, in the true sense of the word." "Isn't that lonely?" "It was, until you two showed up." Clara smiled, a more relaxed smile than he was used to seeing. "Maya has that effect on people. She makes everything lighter. "It's not just Maya," Ethan said, looking directly at her. "You both bring something I didn't even know was missing." For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, watching Maya, who was having a serious conversation with Lila about the importance of not being afraid of the water. "Lila, you need to trust me," Maya was saying. "I'll hold you, and Ethan is a very good teacher. You'll learn in no time." Clara laughed softly. She really believes the doll understands every word. And maybe she does. Who are we to say she doesn't? The rest of the afternoon flowed naturally. Maya alternated between swimming, eating fruit, and introducing Lila to every corner of the garden. Clara gradually relaxed, taking off her shoes and sitting on the edge of the pool with her feet in the water. "I haven't done this in years," she admitted, wiggling her toes in the warm water. "What? Relax?" "Relax like this, with no rush, no to-do list. There's always some chore waiting, some bill to pay, some worry. And today I'm just trying to be present." Ethan sat next to her on the edge of the pool. What does that feel like? Clara thought for a moment. Strange, good, but strange, like I've forgotten how to do it. Maya swam over to them, with Lila floating beside her. "Look, Lila is already learning." "She's a very dedicated student," Ethan said seriously. "She is. And you know why? Because she trusts me. And trust is the most important thing, right, Mommy?" Clara touched her daughter's wet face tenderly. "It is, sweetie. Trust is everything." As the sun began to dip in the sky, painting the pool water gold, the atmosphere became even more relaxed. Maya had tired of swimming and was building sandcastles in a part of the garden, with Lila supervising the construction. "Thank you," Clara said suddenly. "For what?" "For today, for treating us like important people." "You are important people." Clara studied him with curious eyes. "Why did you do this? The invitation, all this effort?" Ethan thought about the answer. "Because you brought joy into my life, and I wanted to give some of that back." "Maya will remember this day forever," Clara said, watching her daughter, who was now singing softly to her doll. "I'll remember it too." When it was time to leave, Maya was visibly reluctant. "Joe, can we do this again sometime?" "Whenever you want," Ethan replied, and he knew he meant it. Clara packed Maya's things into the backpack, but without the usual rush of a workday. Today, there were no strict schedules to keep. "Thank you, Ethan," she said, as they prepared to leave. "It was a perfect day." "For me, too." Maya walked over and, without warning, gave him a tight hug. "You're the best friend me and Mommy have ever had." Ethan was surprised by the intensity of the emotion that hug stirred in him. "You two are the best friends I've ever had, too." As he watched them leave, Ethan realized that something fundamental had changed that Saturday. It hadn't just been a few pleasant hours. It had been a glimpse of what life could be like when shared with the right people. The house returned to silence, but it was a different kind of silence, not empty, but full of newly created memories. The sound of Maya's laughter still echoed around the pool area, and Clara's soft scent still lingered in the air. For the first time in years, Ethan found himself looking forward to the coming Monday. Not for work, but for the chance to see Clara and Maya again, to continue building this unexpected friendship that was changing his life in ways he was still discovering. In the days following that Saturday at the pool, Ethan noticed a subtle change in Clara's behavior. She continued to perform her job with the same dedication as always, but there was something different in her demeanor, a distance that hadn't been there before, a formality that seemed forced. Clara avoided prolonged eye contact. When he tried to start a conversation, she would respond politely but briefly, always finding an excuse to busy herself with some task. It was as if she had built an invisible wall between them, keeping him at a safe distance. Maya, on the other hand, remained the same spontaneous and affectionate child. She would run to greet him when he arrived, chatter about everything during swimming lessons, and ask endless questions about the imaginary fish in the pool. But Ethan noticed that Clara would tense up whenever her daughter showed too much enthusiasm or affection for him. "Maya, don't cling to Ethan," Clara would say when the girl leaned on him to dry her feet after swimming. "He needs his space." "But Mommy, he doesn't mind. Do you mind, Ethan?" "Of course not," he would reply. but Clara was already gently pulling Maya away. It was frustrating and confusing. The Saturday had been so natural, so lovely. Everyone had genuinely had a good time. Why did Clara now seem to be forcing herself to keep her distance? On the Thursday of the second week after their special Saturday, Ethan decided to address the issue directly. Clara was putting cleaning supplies away in the utility closet when he approached. "Sir Clara, can I talk to you for a minute?" She turned, and he could see the immediate tension in her shoulders. "Of course. Is something wrong? Did I forget to clean something?" "No, it's not about work." Ethan took a deep breath. "It's about us, about how you've been acting since last Saturday." Clara looked down at her hands. "I don't understand." "I think you do. You're pulling away from me, avoiding conversation, avoiding even looking me in the eye. Did I do something to upset you?" The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Clara stood still, clearly struggling with something internally, trying to find the right words. "No," she finally said. "You didn't do anything wrong." "Then why are you pulling away?" Clara sighed deeply, as if carrying a heavy weight. "Because I'm getting things mixed up." "What do you mean?" "Ethan, you're my boss. I work for you. Maya and we depend on this job." She finally looked up at him, and her eyes were filled with a vulnerability she rarely showed. "But I can't allow myself to mistake kindness for something else." The raw honesty of that confession hit Ethan hard. He immediately understood Clara's dilemma. She was protecting herself, protecting her daughter's livelihood, protecting herself from potential disappointment. "I don't want to confuse you, Clara," he said as calmly as he could muster. "I just want you to know I enjoy your company. A lot. Not as a boss appreciating efficient employees, as a person enjoying the company of people who have become important to me." Clara looked at him for a long moment, studying his face as if trying to decipher his true intentions. "Maya is getting attached to you," she said softly. "And I am too. And that scares me." "Why?" "Because I've been through this before. I've trusted, I've believed, I've gotten attached. And when the person left..." She stopped, swallowing hard. Maya was too young to understand then. "But she's older now. If she gets too attached and you decide you don't want us around anymore..." Ethan felt a physical pain in his chest as he understood Clara's fear. She wasn't just protecting herself from a potential romantic rejection, she was protecting her daughter from the potential loss of a father figure. "As Clara, I'm not going anywhere. This is my home, this is my job, this is my life. And you two have become a part of my life." "People change their minds," she said simply. "Circumstances change. You might meet someone, get married, have a family of your own, and then there won't be room for the housekeeper and her daughter." Clara's logic was painfully rational. Ethan couldn't promise her that the future would be exactly like the present. No one could make that kind of promise. "You're right," he admitted. "I can't promise that nothing will ever change, but I can promise that as long as you want to be a part of my life, I will want you here." Clara didn't reply immediately. She just looked at him, weighing his words, measuring the sincerity in his voice. "I don't know how to navigate this," she finally said. "I don't know how to be your employee and your friend. I don't know what the boundaries are." "Then let's figure it out together. No pressure, no expectations beyond what naturally develops." Clara nodded slowly but said nothing more. There were no dramatic promises or emotional declarations. Just a quiet understanding that they would continue trying to figure out what was happening between them. In the following days, Clara still maintained a certain caution, but the wall she had built between them began to gradually crumble. She started making eye contact during conversations again, started smiling when Maya did something cute, and started accepting the coffee he offered after her shift. Maya, thankfully, seemed oblivious to all the tension between the adults. She remained the same cheerful and spontaneous child, swimming with enthusiasm, asking impossible questions, and filling the house with her crystal-clear laughter. It was exactly 1 week after his conversation with Clara that Ethan came home on a Tuesday to find the house silent. There were no voices echoing through the halls, no pitter-patter of little feet, no familiar sound of Maya asking when it was time to swim. He checked the calendar, confused. It was Tuesday, a day Clara was scheduled to work, but there were no signs that anyone had been there. His phone rang shortly after 3 in the afternoon. "Ethan?" Clara's voice sounded tired and worried. "It's me, Clara. I'm sorry I didn't call sooner, but Maya woke up with a high fever this morning. I took her to the doctor, and he said it's a bad flu. I can't leave her alone." Of course. Don't worry about work. How is she?" "Very lethargic. Fever, body aches, no appetite. The doctor said it will last a few days. Do you need anything, medicine, food?" "No, thank you. I have everything she needs. I just wanted to let you know I might be out for the rest of the week." "That's no problem at all. Take care of Maya. The house can wait." "Thank you. She asked about you, you know. Said she misses her swimming lessons. I miss her too. Send her my love, okay? And if you need anything at all, call me." After he hung up, Ethan stood in the middle of the living room, listening to the oppressive silence of the house. It was incredible how palpable the absence of Maya and Clara was. Every room seemed to echo with emptiness. Every hallway seemed longer. Every object seemed purposeless. He tried to stick to his normal routine. He worked in his home office, swam his usual laps in the pool, and had dinner at the large table. But everything seemed colorless, lifeless, meaningless. Wednesday was worse. Ethan found himself checking the clock every few minutes, expecting to hear the key in the door, the footsteps running down the hall, Maya's high-pitched voice asking if she could swim, but there was only silence. Thursday came and went in the same way. Ethan called Clara in the late afternoon to check on Maya. "A little better," Clara said, but she still sounded exhausted. The fever broke, but she's still very weak. She slept almost the entire day. "And you, were you taking care of yourself too?" "I'm fine, just worried about her." "Clara, if you need anything at all." "I know. Thank you." On Friday, Ethan came home determined to work late to distract himself from their absence. But at 5 o'clock, he heard the familiar sound of the key in the door. His heart leaped. He hurried down the stairs and found Clara entering with Maya in her arms. The little girl was pale and thin, clearly still recovering, but her eyes lit up when she saw him. "Ethan," she said in a voice weaker than usual, but with the same enthusiasm as always. "Did you miss me?" "Very much," he replied sincerely, approaching them. "How are you feeling?" "Better. Mommy took great care of me, but I wanted to come see you." Clara set Maya down, and the girl ran to hug Ethan's legs, still a bit wobbly. "She insisted on coming today," Clara explained. "Said she missed the house and you. I thought maybe a little swim might help with her recovery." Ethan looked from Maya to Clara, feeling an intense emotion welling up in his chest. They had missed him too. They had chosen to come back, even with Maya still recovering. "I missed you," he said, looking directly at Clara. Not just her, both of you. The impact of his words was immediate. Clara stood still for a moment, processing what he had said. It wasn't just politeness or kindness. It was an honest confession that their absence had left a real void in his life. Maya was distracted, exploring the pool area to see if anything had changed during her absence. Clara approached Ethan slowly. "We missed you too," she said softly. "You did?" "Maya cried for 2 nights straight, saying she wanted to see you, and She paused, as if gathering courage. "I found myself wondering how you were doing, if you were eating properly, if you were feeling lonely." The honesty of that confession touched something deep in Ethan's chest. Clara had thought about him, worried about him, missed him. Instinctively, he reached out his hand to her. Clara looked at his outstretched hand for a few seconds, clearly making an important decision. Then, slowly, she took his hand. The touch was simple, but loaded with meaning. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic. It was just 2 people admitting they had become important to each other. "Mommy!" "Ethan!" Maya yelled from the edge of the pool. "You're holding hands!" Clara blushed but didn't let go of Ethan's hand immediately. "It's because we're friends, sweetie," she said to Maya. "Good," Maya replied with typical simplicity. I like it when the people I love are friends with each other." Ethan and Clara looked at each other, still holding hands, understanding that something had definitively changed between them. They didn't know exactly what it was or where it would lead, but they knew it was real. "Can I swim a little?" Maya asked. Just a little, because I'm still recovering. Of course, Ethan said, finally letting go of Clara's hand. But take it easy, okay? We'll go slow today. As he helped Maya get into the pool, Ethan felt that the house had come back to life. The silence had been broken, the color had returned, the purpose had been restored. And for the first time, he didn't try to overanalyze what was happening. He just accepted the joy of having Clara and Maya back, the happiness of knowing they had missed him too, and the hope that these mutual feelings meant they were building something real and lasting together. The house was a home again. A Thursday evening brought with it a special atmosphere. Maya had finished her swimming lesson early, still tired from the lingering effects of the flu, and had fallen asleep on the living room sofa while Clara finished tidying the kitchen. The house was bathed in the golden light of late afternoon, creating an almost magical ambience around the pool. Ethan and Clara were sitting in the outdoor area in comfortable silence, watching the sun slowly set on the horizon. It was one of those rare moments when time seemed to stand still, as if the world had paused just for them. "Clara," Ethan said suddenly, breaking the silence. There was something different in his voice, a seriousness she rarely heard. "Yes," she replied, turning to look at him. Ethan was quiet for a few seconds, as if organizing thoughts he had held onto for a long time. "I need to tell you something, about my life before you two arrived." Clara settled back in her chair, sensing he was about to share something important. "I'm listening." "I've spent my life surrounded by self-serving people," he began, looking at the golden water of the pool. "Beautiful, but empty women, meaningless relationships, people who got close because of the money, the status, the social position I could offer." He paused, as if the words were difficult to say. "Ever since my company started to succeed, when the money came, I noticed people changed around me, self-interested smiles, calculated conversations, displays of affection that vanished when there was nothing to gain." Clara listened in silence, seeing a vulnerability in Ethan that he rarely showed. "I had relationships," he continued. "Beautiful women, intelligent on paper. We went out to expensive dinners, social events, exotic trips, but there was always a sense of emptiness, as if it were all a performance, as if they were playing the role of the perfect girlfriend and I was playing the role of the successful man." "That must have been very lonely," Clara said softly. "It was. Lonelier than living alone, because at least in solitude you don't have to pretend." Ethan finally looked at her. "It's different with you, Clara. You're real. You're exactly what I've always been looking for." The words hung in the air between them. Clara felt her heart race, but at the same time a strange calm washed over her, as if she had been waiting for this conversation without knowing it. "I don't have money," she said simply. "I have no social status. I can't offer you anything that those other women offered." "You offer me something far more valuable," Ethan replied. "Authenticity. A daughter who genuinely laughs when she's happy. A woman who works with dignity, who loves unconditionally, who faces hardship with a strength I've never seen before." Clara looked down, processing his words. "Ethan, You don't have to say anything right now," he interrupted gently. "I just wanted you to know. I wanted you to understand why your presence here means so much to me." Clara took a deep breath, as if making an important decision. When she looked up, there was a new determination in her eyes. "Since we're being honest," she said, "I need to tell you something too, something I've never told anyone." Ethan waited, giving her the time she needed. "Maya doesn't have a father because he left us before she was even born," Clara said, each word coming out with difficulty. "I've never told anyone that, not even the few friends I have, nor my previous employers. I always let people assume he left the picture after she was born." She paused, fighting with emotions that clearly shook her. "When I found out I was pregnant, I was scared, but also happy. I thought he would be happy too. After all, we had talked about the future, about plans." Clara smiled bitterly. "I was so naive." "What happened?" Ethan asked softly. He panicked. Said he wasn't ready, that he was too young, that he couldn't ruin his life over a mistake. The words came out laden with an old pain that Clara still carried. "It wasn't an argument. There was no attempt to work it out. He just walked out of my life as if he'd never been there. Clara wiped away a tear that had escaped. The worst part was realizing I had created a fantasy about who he was, that I had fallen in love with someone who didn't really exist. "I'm so sorry," Ethan said, and she could hear the sincerity in his voice. "Maya sometimes asks about her father. I always tell her he left when she was too little to remember. I can't bring myself to tell a 5-year-old that her father rejected us before he even met her." "You made the right choice," Ethan said. "She doesn't need to carry that weight." Clara looked at him with gratitude. "I've never told anyone this, but you make me feel like I can talk, like I can be completely honest without fear of judgment." "You can," Ethan said simply. "You always can." They sat in silence for a few minutes, each processing what had been shared. It was as if they had removed the last layers of protection between them, leaving themselves completely exposed and vulnerable. "Maya is waking up," Clara said, hearing movement from the living room. "Mommy?" Maya's sleepy voice echoed from the house. "I'm here, sweetie," Clara replied, getting up to go to her daughter. Maya appeared in the outdoor area, her hair still messy from sleep, rubbing her eyes. "Did I sleep long?" "Just a little nap," Clara said, picking her up. "How are you feeling?" "Better. Can I swim a little more before we go?" Clara looked at Ethan, who nodded in agreement. "Just for a few minutes, okay, you're still recovering." While Maya played in the shallow end of the pool, Clara and Ethan resumed their conversation, but now there was a different intimacy between them. The confessions had built a bridge of trust that hadn't existed before. "Thank you," Clara said, "for listening without judgment." "No, thank you," Ethan replied. "Jai, for trusting me." The following days passed with a new naturalness. The tension that had once existed between them had almost completely dissipated. Clara still worked with the same dedication, but now there was a lightness in her movements, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Maya remained the same cheerful child, but Ethan noticed she seemed more relaxed too. As if the harmony between the adults created a safer environment for her. It was on a Tuesday, a week after their revealing conversation, that Ethan made a decision that had been maturing in his mind. Clara was putting away the cleaning supplies when he approached. "Clara, can I talk to you?" "Of course," she replied, noticing something different in his tone. "Not here." "Let's go to the living room." They settled on the sofa, with Maya playing in the garden, visible through the windows. Ethan was visibly nervous, which made Clara curious and slightly apprehensive. "Clara," he began, "I don't want you to work here as a housekeeper anymore." Clara's heart skipped a beat. It was what she had always feared. The moment he would grow tired of them, the moment he would decide they no longer fit into his life. "I understand," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "When would you like me to stop coming?" "You don't understand," Ethan said quickly, realizing the misunderstanding. "I don't want you to stop coming. I just don't want you working as a housekeeper. Not because I don't like your work, but because you deserve more." Clara looked at him, confused, not understanding where he was going with this. "You are strong, intelligent, capable. You have a dedication and integrity that I rarely see in people in any profession." Ethan took a deep breath. "I can no longer see you as an employee. I want you by my side." The silence stretched between them as Clara processed what she was hearing. "Let's try to be a family," Ethan asked, his voice filled with hope and vulnerability. Clara stood still for a long moment, looking at him with a mixture of surprise, fear, and something that looked like hope. "Toad family," she repeated, as if testing the weight of the word. "You, me, and Maya, not as boss and employee, but as people who care about each other, as people who have found something special together." Clara looked out at the garden, where Maya was singing softly to her doll. Then she looked back at Ethan, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "But what if it doesn't work out?" she asked. "What if we find out we're too different? What if you get tired of everyday life, of the responsibilities of a real family?" "And what if it does work out?" Ethan replied. "What if we find out we're exactly what the other was looking for? What if we find out that family is this, people choosing to stay together, to take care of each other, to build something beautiful together?" Clara closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the decision. When she opened them, there was a calm determination there. "Maya is going to be ecstatic," she said, a small smile appearing on her lips. "Mom, is that a yes?" Ethan asked, hardly daring to believe it. Clara nodded slowly, the tears finally escaping. "It's a yes." Ethan moved closer and, very gently, hugged her. It was a hug of relief, of hope, of promise. "Mommy, Ethan!" Maya shouted from the garden, running toward them. "Why are you hugging?" Clara and Ethan pulled apart, smiling through their tears. "Because we have some news for you, sweetie," Clara said, pulling Maya close. "What news?" Maya asked, excited. Ethan looked at Clara, who nodded for him to continue. "How would you two like to come live here with us? Forever," he said. Maya looked from one to the other, processing the information. Then her face lit up with the brightest smile he had ever seen. "Yes, forever, like a real family." "Like a real family," Clara confirmed. Maya leaped into Ethan's arms, hugging him with all the strength of her 5 years. "I always knew you liked us. I always knew." As he held Maya and looked at Clara, Ethan felt he had finally found what he had been searching for his whole life. It wasn't perfect, it wouldn't be easy, but it was real. It was a chosen family, built on honesty, affection, and the conscious decision to be together. And for the first time in years, the future seemed full of endless possibilities. 2 weeks after their decision to become a family, the house had completely transformed. Not physically. The furniture was still in the same places, the paintings still decorated the walls, but there was a different energy flowing through the rooms, an energy of life being truly lived. Clara and Maya moved in on a sunny weekend. They didn't have much to bring, some carefully folded clothes, Maya's toys organized in a box, the doll Lila, and a few personal items that carried important memories. Ethan had prepared a room for Maya upstairs, decorated with care but without extravagance, leaving space for her to personalize it herself. "So can I put my drawings on the wall?" Maya asked, exploring her new room with eyes shining with excitement. "And can I choose where Lila sleeps?" "Of course you can. It's your room now," Ethan replied, watching as she ran from one side to the other, planning where everything would go. Clara settled into the room next to Maya's, a practical decision that respected the time they all needed to adjust to the new family dynamic. It was one step at a time. No pressure, just letting things happen naturally. The first major change came when Ethan suggested something that would completely alter Clara's routine. "Have you ever thought about going back to school?" he asked one morning, as they had coffee together while Maya played in the garden. "School," Clara repeated, as if the word were foreign in her mouth, a concept she had abandoned so long ago. "You mentioned once that you had to drop out of school when Maya was born. Did you ever want to go back?" Clara was quiet for a moment, stirring her coffee, considering a possibility that seemed too distant to be real. "I always wanted to finish high school. I even dreamed of going to college someday. But that seems impossible. Who would watch Maya? How would I pay for it? Maya can stay with me while you're at school." "It would be a pleasure to take care of her," Ethan said with sincerity. "And as for paying, consider it a family investment in you, in our future." The idea both scared and excited Clara. For years, she had buried any dreams of formal education, focusing only on day-to-day survival. "There's a night school near here," Ethan continued. "You could go 3 times a week, after Maya is asleep. We can arrange it in whatever way works best for you." Maya, who had been listening to the conversation while playing on the living room floor, looked up with interest. "Is Mommy going to be a student like me?" "Something like that, sweetie," Clara replied, still processing the possibility opening up before her. "Mom, that's so cool. Then we can do our homework together." Maya's innocent excitement was the final push Clara needed. A week later, she was enrolled in a night course to finish her high school diploma. The first few weeks were an adjustment period for everyone. Clara left for school 3 times a week at 7 in the evening, returning around 11. Ethan completely took over Maya's care on those days, giving her baths, reading stories, putting her to bed. "Are you sure this isn't too much work?" Clara asked one night, watching Ethan patiently dry Maya's hair after her bath. Of course not. In fact, it's... He paused, searching for the right words. It's one of the best parts of my day. And it was true. Ethan discovered he loved the evening routine with Maya. She was an easy child to care for, obedient without being passive, talkative without being overbearing. They developed little rituals. Maya would choose 2 stories for him to read, then she would tell him about her day, and then they would invent stories together about the fish in the pool. Today, the mermaid queen of the fish was teaching the baby fish how to swim, Maya said one night, snuggled in bed with Lila in her arms. And how did the first lesson go? Ethan asked, playing along. Really good. One little fish was scared, just like I used to be. But the mermaid said it's normal to be scared, that everyone is scared of new things. The mermaid is very wise. She is, just like you when you taught me how to swim. Moments like these touched Ethan in a way he hadn't expected. There was something deeply satisfying about being this stable presence in Maya's life, being someone she trusted completely. Clara, in turn, flourished with her studies. Initially insecure after being away from school for so long, she quickly discovered that her maturity and life experience helped her absorb the material easily. The teachers liked her. She was a dedicated, punctual student, always prepared. "How was class today?" Ethan would ask when she got home. "Good. Hard, but good," she would reply, her eyes shining with an energy he had rarely seen before. "We're studying literature. Who knew I would enjoy analyzing poems so much?" The household routine changed completely, but in an organic and natural way. Ethan discovered he enjoyed cooking, something he had never explored when he lived alone. Clara would help on weekends, teaching him simple recipes that Maya loved. The little girl started having small but important responsibilities, putting away her toys, helping set the table, feeding the goldfish Ethan had bought for the pool. Maya was visibly more confident and happy. She had always been a cheerful child, but now there was a new security in her movements, a certainty that she belonged in that place. At school, her teachers commented on the positive change in her behavior. It was on a Thursday afternoon, about 2 months after the move, that the moment happened that changed everything for Ethan. Maya was in the garden, drawing on a clipboard he had bought for her. It was a colorful drawing, a big house with a pool, 3 figures holding hands, and a bright yellow sun in the sky. "Ethan, come see," she shouted, waving him over. He walked over, drying his hands on a dish towel. He was trying a new recipe for dinner. "Daddy, look what I made," Maya said, holding up the drawing proudly. The word hit Ethan like a lightning bolt. Daddy. She had said it naturally, without thinking, as if it had always been that way. Ethan stood still for a few seconds, looking at the drawing that clearly depicted the 3 of them as a family, trying to process the intense emotion that surged in his chest. Maya, noticing his silence, became slightly worried. "Do you like it? The sun might be a little crooked, but it's perfect," Ethan said, his voice coming out more emotional than he intended. "Absolutely perfect." Clara appeared at the kitchen door, drawn by the conversation. When she saw the expression on Ethan's face, she approached curiously. "So is what happened?" she asked. Ethan looked at her, his eyes shining with tears he didn't try to hide. "She called me Daddy." Clara looked at Maya, who was proudly showing off her drawing, completely unaware of the impact of her words. A smile spread across Clara's face, and tears began to well up in her eyes too. "She only said what she already felt," Clara said softly. Maya looked from one adult to the other, sensing that something special was happening but not quite understanding what. "Can I call you Daddy?" she asked Ethan, suddenly shy. "Or do you prefer if I keep calling you Ethan?" Ethan knelt to her level, holding her small hands. "You can call me whatever you want, Maya. But if you want to call me Daddy, it would be the greatest honor of my life." Maya smiled, that brilliant smile that could light up any room. "So you're my daddy now, and Mommy is my mommy, and we're a real family." "Yes, we are," Ethan confirmed, hugging her with all the love that had grown in his heart. That night at dinner, Maya was particularly talkative, telling them about her new teacher, her friends at school, and the fish in the pool that she was sure were growing. "You know what I told Laura today?" she said, referring to her best friend from school. What did you say? Clara asked. That I have a complete family now. A mommy, a daddy, and me. Maya paused to chew a piece of chicken, and she said I'm lucky because not everyone has that. Ethan and Clara exchanged glances across the table, both touched by the child's innocent wisdom. Can I say something? Maya said, suddenly becoming more serious. Of course, sweetie, Clara replied. Maya held out her hands, one to each side of the table. Ethan and Clara took her small hands, forming a chain of 3. This is my family, Maya declared solemnly, the most beautiful one in the world. The silence that followed was charged with emotion. Ethan looked at Clara, and she looked at him, and something deep and indescribable passed between them. It wasn't just love, though it was that too. It was recognition, gratitude, the absolute certainty that they had found where they belonged. The most beautiful one in the world, Ethan agreed, his voice slightly hoarse. Later that night, after Maya had gone to bed and Clara was studying for a test, Ethan walked through the house. He stopped in the living room, looking at the shelf where the old clock had been stopped for so many years. The hands still pointed to 3:17, frozen in time. Without hesitation, Ethan picked up the clock and carried it to his office. He opened a drawer and carefully stored it away, wrapped in a soft cloth. He no longer needed that symbol of stopped time, of a suspended life. Time had started moving again. Life had started flowing again. In place of the clock, he put Maya's drawing, the house, the family, the bright sun. It was a much truer representation of what his life had become. When he returned to the kitchen, he found Clara studying at the table, surrounded by books and notes. She looked up when she heard him enter. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Everything is perfect," he replied, and for the first time in his life, those words were completely true. The house was alive now. Laughter echoed through the hallways, lively conversations happened during meals, and small arguments over whose turn it was to pick the movie created a loving chaos that Ethan had never imagined he would want. Clara grew every day, gaining confidence with her studies, making plans for a future that might include college, perhaps a career she had always dreamed of but never dared to pursue. Maya blossomed in the environment of security and love, becoming more creative, more communicative, more confident. Her drawings now always included 3 figures, and she had begun to refer to Ethan as Daddy, with the naturalness of someone who had never known any other reality. And Ethan discovered that the life he had built in silence and solitude was just the prologue to the real story that was beginning now. A story of a chosen family, of love built day by day, of time that had finally regained its meaning. The clock was put away, time was moving forward, and for the first time in years, Ethan was truly alive. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.